Hi, I'm Jessica with Ellie and Mac, and today we're going to be making a super cute swimsuit that you're going to be able to use in multiple different ways all summer long. So this one is adorable. I think you're going to love these ruched shorts. They are a functional drawstring here on the side, so you can make them longer or shorter depending on how you want to wear them. There is also a bikini bottom and a non-ruched short bottom. This is the Tankini top, and it has this adorable drawstring right here in the middle at the natural waist, the back, the front, and this nice little peplum at the bottom. This is the shortest length. There are two other lengths. So if you haven't cut the pieces out yet, you may not know that there are quite a few pieces because there are so many options to this pattern. So make sure you look through the pieces very carefully. I actually went and wrote mine all down, like all the pieces that I needed to cut before I cut them, just so I wasn't confused when I got to the point where I was like, oh, what do I need to cut next? So now let's capture that elephant in the room. You might be wondering, hey, this is a clothing tutorial. Where's Diana? She had some surgery difficulties, so I'm filling in this week. Don't worry, she'll be back. She's not gone forever. But for a little while, she's got to get that surgery fixed. So without further ado, let's get started making this. And one more thing, at the end, I'll be putting the swimsuit on so you can see how it looks. And I'll also be showing you a little sneak peek of what's coming in 2 weeks from now. So stick around to find that out. Okay, we're going to start with looking at the lining, and whether you're making the bikini or the tankini, these pieces look really similar at the beginning, and so we're going to treat them the same. So this is my back. I hope you've marked yours back and front because they are pretty similar, but the back kind of has a wider neckline, and here's the front. We're going to start looking at this front, and whatever side you decide is the wrong side of your fabric. So usually there's a wrong side, right? But on my fabric, this side's a lot smoother and I want that touching my skin. So I'm going to say that this is the wrong side, even though it normally would be the right side. So don't let that confuse you. And on this side, if you decide that you want to add little bra pads, then you can. So these are just some that I got out of a swimsuit that I'm not wearing anymore. So they will work. They're just little foam pads, or you can order some on Amazon. These are a little different. They're like a teardrop, and there's like some padding inside, and this is like to help it stay up. So, you know, use whatever ones you like and you have. I would recommend not going too thick unless you want to size up. So like these have a little bit of padding in them. That's okay, but I've put ones that are like really thick in before, and then I should have sized up because it basically put me in the next size for the bust, right? Okay, so as far as where to put these, you can see I have like a little bit of chalk right here. What you want to do is just hold it up to the wearer's body, who you're making this for you or somebody else. And I just traced around. So I just held it up to myself, put the bra cup on there, and then traced with chalk all the way around. And then once you have a placement of one, you can get the opposite side. You don't want them to be wonky. So probably the best thing to do is to just fold it in half and then mark, maybe with some pins. That's probably what I'm going to do here. And make sure that you have those two bra cups lined up exactly. Okay, now that I have those marked, I've decided I'm going to use these. I think they're the easiest. I don't have to worry about the padding or flipping it which way ever. So I'm going to use these and pop them right on those circles. Now, you might be wondering, like, do I sew this on with it, like, because it's kind of like convex, right? Do I do it like that, or should I press it down? You should press it down. So make sure you've got it pressed down into place, and then you can pin that center part on and make sure that the fabric doesn't bubble underneath. And so when you go around, just kind of keep it pressed flat like this. Okay, so once you have those all pinned in place and you've checked the back and you like how it looks, we're just going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to, like I said, flatten them out. And so right here around the edge, you can use a zigzag stitch, and you just kind of want to do maybe, you know, 1/8 of an inch from this edge right here. Just make sure you catch it all the way around. And then we'll come back and do the next step. Okay, so I'm going to start with a zigzag stitch, width 3.5 and length 2.5, and see how that goes. You can test this and make sure you like how it looks before you do it, or you can try these settings and see how you like them. Next, we'll take our main front tankini or bikini piece and back and place them right sides together. And then you're just going to pin or clip the sides and at the shoulders. I'm going to grab my clips. When I have to use pins, I use pins, but when I can use clips, I use clips. Are you a pinner or a clipper? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments. Okay, once you have everything clipped into place, and don't let this center part confuse you. We're not sewing that. This is just how I mark my front and back. We're just going to sew up the side seams here and the shoulder seams here. And you can choose if you want to use your serger, or you can use the sewing machine with a zigzag stitch or whatever stretch stitch that you love. And we're going to do the same thing with the tankini or bikini top liner. So you can flip this to the right side. Remember, we added those pads on the wrong side. And then put that right sides together with the back. And we're going to pin or clip the sides and top just the same way we did with the main pieces. And then sew them with your favorite stretch stitch. Okay, after you have that sewn up, we want to keep our liner wrong sides out, but we want to turn the main bodice right side out. And then we're going to match up. So here's my back. Make sure that the fronts are with the fronts and the backs are with the backs. And we're going to slide the lining into the main fabric so that they're wrong sides together, wrong sides touching. Okay, once you have them kind of together like this, we're going ahead and pin or clip them into place at the shoulders here. I would start at one of these seams and around each arm side, and then the same around the neckline. When you sandwich these seams, you can choose to like flip them the opposite directions so that there's less bulk. But I think with swim fabrics, they're pretty thin anyway. So if you just want to clip them and not worry about that, I think that's also okay. Okay, once you have all of that clipped into place with the main and lining there, we're also going to go ahead and clip around this bottom waist part. And once you have all of this clipped, then we're just going to go baste everything together so that we can now treat this as basically like one piece of fabric when we get to the next part. So whether you're making the tankini, like me, or the bikini, you should be at this point. Now, if you decide that you're making, or if you are making, I should say, the bikini, because you would have already had to make that choice, then you'll follow along with the steps in the instructions, and you add a band here and then put elastic inside it. And that will be the same as the waist for the shorts. So if you're not sure how to do that part, you can skip ahead to the shorts and see how that's constructed, because it's the same thing, just opposite. Like this is on the bottom and that one will be on the top. Okay, so but if we're doing the tankini, follow along here. And so we're going to set this aside just for a moment and grab our two skirt pieces for the tankini. And you should have marked your your front and your back. They are just slightly different. And we're going to place those right sides together and match up these side seams and clip those into place or pin. And then we'll go ahead and sew these side seams with your preferred stretch stitch. Okay, I've got mine sewn into place. Next, we're going to go back to the front bodice here. And for the tankini, it has a little drawstring at the front. So make sure you know which side is your front. This is my front. And right here at the center front, if you haven't marked it, we can actually just fold this in half and then mark that center front. So now we have the bottom center front marked right here. And then we're going to go up 3/4 of an inch from that center front. And I'm going to flip it to the wrong side here and make a little marking. And that is where we're going to put our buttonhole. And right here in this spot, we're going to apply a little piece, a little scrap of interfacing. So I have a scrap that's about 1.5 inches wide by 1 inch tall. We just want it a little bit bigger than the buttonhole. And we're going to apply that to the wrong side of the fabric right here. So take this over to your iron and give that a nice press. Make sure that you're interfacing the part that has the adhesive, which is kind of rough, is down against the wrong side. Okay, I've got my interfacing on, and so now all we need to do is just transfer the markings, if you haven't already, for where we're going to put the buttonhole to the right side of the fabric. So the reason we didn't do it before is a lot of marking pins, they kind of disappear right after you use the interfacing. So on mine, I put it right here in the center, and we can remeasure and just make sure that that is 3/4 inch up, and that it is right in the center. And that looks good. So I'll go ahead and mark exactly where I like that buttonhole to be. You want your buttonhole to be probably somewhere around 1/2 inch. We just need to be able to fit both of the drawstrings through the buttonhole. So I'm going to make a mark here with tailor's chalk. You can use whatever kind of marking utensil you like. And I like to do an X because I want to know where's the center. Where's the center of that? And then we can mark on the outsides to know where to start and stop the buttonhole as well, or at least where to start it, depending on what type of buttonhole you're using. Okay, so to mark where I want to start this, I'm going to actually just use a 1/2 inch button. So you can do it however you like, but this is kind of nice because in the buttonholer on mine, you can put this in the back and it squeezes into that length, and then that's how big the buttonhole will be. So might as well use it for both, right? So I'm going to center that right on our marking here and just draw a line on either side. I'm using a friction pen. These just erase with any heat at all, so I definitely couldn't use it before we added the interfacing. So I'll probably start right here. So X marks the spot, but I put one on this side too. It doesn't really matter which side you start the buttonholer on, whichever way fits in there the best. And that way, this is how long this will be. Now, so you could make it a tiny bit smaller, but I think this will be good, this little 1/2 inch button. So here's my buttonholer foot for my machine. I can pull that out for you. So on mine, you just stick it into the back right here, and then just follow your machine instructions for how to use it because they're all a little bit different, but that will be the size, and then that way both the drawstrings will fit through. Okay, so I have my buttonholer, and on mine you have to put this little lever down and switch it to the buttonhole, and then I've got just some scraps here. I'm going to make sure that I know exactly which direction it's going to go because I tend to forget which side you start on. So I'm going to make a little mark. And I want to make sure that the buttonholer works for this type of fabric with the interfacing and the needle and everything, because sometimes these can be a little finicky. So I even put that little interfacing scrap on the back just to make sure that it's going to work. And now I can't see my, let's put it over here. I do suggest you do the same. It's important to know if it's going to work or not. On my machine, you can use the pedal or you can use the little buttons on the front. Little buttons right here. So I'm going to unplug my pedal and use the buttons and just let the buttonholer do its thing. So it goes that way. So whichever way you start, it's going to go that way on most machines probably. Okay, so the buttonhole actually got kind of big. It's about 7/8 of an inch there. So I might put a little bit smaller of a button inside there just so I don't have quite so big of a hole, because I don't think we need it for those drawstrings to come through. Okay, I found a smaller button, so I'm going to pop that in the back of the buttonholer. And I'm just going to go for it. I should probably test it again, but I'm feeling confident, so I'm going to go for it. So I'm going to start just a little bit here. And remember, the buttonhole went that way, so we need to start on this side of it. And I like to make that X because it's really difficult once you get it under the hole to like actually see what you drew. Okay, I don't know why, but buttonholing is a little scary. If you feel the same way, let me know in the comments. Like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's like having to think about picking the stitches if you do it wrong is just overwhelming. Okay, well, let's press the button and see how it goes. Okay, I think it actually turned out really good. I'm happy with that length. It's just a bit shorter now, maybe just over a 1/2 inch here, but on the inside, maybe just slightly more than a 1/2 inch. And then we need to cut that open before we move on, so make sure you do that. A good way to do it is to add a pin right here at the end, and then you can use a seam ripper. And then that way the pin stops you from going beyond where you should be going. And then you've got that little opening. And sometimes I'll take my little scissors and just get right up to the edge without snipping through. And then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so grab the Tankini bodice here, and we're just going to put it like this, matching up those side seams so that we can mark the center back. You can mark it with a pin or a clip, and mark the center front. Right here at the waist. And then we're going to do the same thing with that Tankini skirt. If you haven't already, you're just going to match up the side seams and mark the front. And I like to mark my front with one pinner clip, and then the back with 2. And then that way I know which one is the back. Just like this. Okay, and then we're going to put our Tankini skirt wrong sides out, and we'll keep the bodice right sides out. And flip the bodice this way, and then we just want to make sure that we're matching up the front with the front and the back with the back. So here's the front of my Tankini skirt and the center front of the bodice there. And then you can clip those together. And then do the same thing for the back. And then you can match up these side seams. Everything should match up just perfectly. And then you can add a few more pins or clips in between each of those if you'd like. I'm going to, because swim fabric is slippery. If it were, you know, some kind of woven, really easy to work with fabric, then I probably would just stick with the 4. But with slippery knits, I'm going to go for more. More is better here. Okay, so now we're not going to just serge, or we can't use a serger here, I should say. So what we need to do is take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to create a casing here. So that's where the drawstring and casing part comes in. So you're going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance right here all the way around. And you need to use a stretch stitch. So you can use a zigzag stitch or a triple stitch. If you use a zigzag stitch, just make sure that you're not going too far into where that casing is, because we do have to get the drawstring through. So 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. Okay, so for this part, I'm going to use a triple stitch. So that one on my machine is right here. It looks like 3 stitches, 3, 3 like that. And you can choose if you want to make the stitches just a little bit longer. I think I will. I think I'll go up to around 3 and see how that looks first. Now, I do have to tell you something really important about this stitch. It's very, very difficult to pull out. So be really careful when you're doing this, because picking this stitch is a bear. If you'd rather not use this stitch, you could also use just a regular zigzag stitch, and you can use that 3.5 width and 2.5 length. That'd probably work pretty well here. What I do like about the triple stitch is you can easily know exactly where to put your presser foot, because it just goes in a straight line, like a straight stitch. And so on mine, the needle's to the left, and so I can just align it with my foot. So. Okay, so it should now look like this. And what we're going to do next is cut the one side of the seam allowance, but not the other. So we're not cutting the skirt part at all. We're only cutting this top basted seam allowance right here. So I have some scissors that are a little bit curved. Use whatever you've got, but just be really careful. All we're trying to do is cut this part here. And you don't have to cut it all the way down. You can leave 1/8 of an inch there, but cut all the way around just this part of the seam allowance and not that bottom tankini part. Okay, once you have that all trimmed, we are just going to press the seam allowance up toward the bodice. So I already went over with my iron and just pressed it. Just be careful of your heat settings with this type of fabric. You don't want to melt it. And then once you've had that all nicely pressed, we're going to pin it into place all along here, just through the 2 layers like this. So just make sure that that outer layer there isn't bunched up, and this is pulled up as far as it can go. And then we want to pin it all along in place. Okay, once you have that all the way pinned up, you can go over to the sewing machine, and you're just going to sew really close to this edge. I would suggest sewing it from this side. I think it's going to be difficult to sew it from the right side here. You can use a triple stitch or a zigzag stitch, whatever you choose. And just make sure on this part with the drawstring that you have the fabric up over the area where the drawstring will go through, because this is our casing for that drawstring. So if it's down below the buttonhole, that won't work. Once you've gone all the way around, you should have that casing now with that drawstring in the middle. So, or the drawstring spot, I should say, in the middle, the buttonhole. So let's grab those drawstrings and get them sewn up. You should have 2 pieces here, and we want them to be 1 piece. So grab 2 of the short ends. Doesn't really matter which ones. If you have a print, you can think about that, but mine is non-directional. So we're going to match up the 2 short ends and sew them right here across this way. Okay, once you have that little part sewn up, we can put it out this way. And then we're going to fold the entire length right sides together. And you can choose to pin or clip it. And once you've got that all pinned or clipped, you can take it over to the serger or the sewing machine. That's up to you. And what we're going to actually do is sew up the sides, these ends here. But if you're using a serger, you want to sew the full length besides a little gap here in the middle. And let me show you where the best probably place to leave that gap is. It's better to not leave it right here on the seam. So you can leave it something like this, just, you know, a few inches so you can get in there and get it all turned right side out. So this is where we'll turn it, is through this gap. So we're going to sew all the way down the length of the entire strap. And then again, if you're using a serger, do that and then close the ends right here, these short ends, with your sewing machine. If you're sewing it with a sewing machine, you can just go ahead and start here and go all the way down the length and then end on the other short end there, except the gap, of course. Don't forget the gap. So I have mine marked with double clips here. Some people like to do like an X, a pin this way and then a pin that way on the 2 parts, so they're not supposed to sew. However you like to mark it so that you remember, do that, because I can't tell you how many times I haven't remembered. Okay, so let's go get this sewn up. Okay, so I have mine sewn along the long edge, and then I use the sewing machine here at the end. I have a little gap right here in the center, and the same on the other side with the sewing machine. If you want, you can trim the ends just a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and turn this right side out. There's a couple different ways to do it. You can use a loop turner like this one, has a little hook on the end, and just stick it in there and pull it back through. Or you can also use one like this, which I prefer for something long like this. I think it works better. So this is like a little fabric tube, and then looks like a chopstick, right? So you stick the fabric tube into the fabric through the gap. And what's nice about the knit fabric is it kind of stretches. Sometimes the tube doesn't fit and you're like, no, now what do I do? But should fit with it being knit fabric. And you go all the way to the end. And then you got to be careful. If you stick the pokey end in, sometimes it causes a hole. So you can try the blunt end first, but you just stick it in there. And you kind of let the fabric roll up the tube until it comes out the end. And you see now that side of the drawstring is all turned right side out. And then I'm just going to do the other one the same way. If you were going to use this loop turner, you just stick that through the hole. The problem is that, like, once you come back, it sometimes gets stuck. So I do prefer this method. I've also seen people where they'll put like a string through the whole thing before they start, and then they just like pull it out from the string which is sewn into the top of it. Or I've also seen, which I think is really cool, and I think we're going to try it with the drawstrings if you're doing the ruching on the shorts, is you use a long serger tail and then you just turn it with the tail. This one I felt was like a little bit long for that, so I decided to do this method instead. Okay, once you have that all turned out right, all we're going to do is just sew it closed with the sewing machine. This gap will be in the back inside the casing. You won't see it at all. So I guess if you really didn't want to sew it up, you could leave it open. But we'll do the right thing here. And we'll just fold it like this in that gap area, and then just go close up that gap really fast at the sewing machine. I have my little gap sewn up. It doesn't have to look beautiful. And next we're going to put the drawstring through the buttonhole. And you can use whatever you like to get it through there. So this is a safety pin, of course. If you use a safety pin, I like to tape them closed. I have had a lot of issues with them opening up when you're inside of a casing. That's the worst. So use what you like, or you can also use a bodkin. So I'm going to try the bodkin first. I like when the bodkin works. I don't like when the bodkin doesn't work. What is your favorite casing tool, I should say? I used to have this really neat thing that's like an elastic pull through thing, and it's really long. It kind of looked like a topsy-turvy. Did you guys ever have a topsy-turvy? It's one of those things that you use for your hair. Anyway, it's like a piece of plastic that you can go all the way through the casing with. It's flexible, and then you can just like loop your elastic or whatever through there. But the problem I had is I got two of them and they both broke, and I was so bummed about it, but I really like that thing. So if anyone has one of those things, you know what I'm talking about, an elastic puller through, and it's a nice one, let me know where you got it, because I want one. But so far, I haven't had great luck with them being durable. Okay, so you're just gonna get it all the way through this casing, all the way around. Okay, that is starting to look so cute. I am really excited how this is turning out. How is yours looking? Hopefully it's also looking really cute. I do need to even these out just a little bit more, but we can decide how we want to finish these. So if you want, you can do like a little knot just so that it doesn't go back in later. I think that's kind of cute. And then once you have them all even, see mine's like, this one's way shorter than that one. That's okay. But once you have them evened out, then you'll tie that, and that will be adorable. I love it. Okay, let's move on to the next thing, which is what we're going to be making today is the ruched shorts. If you're making the bikini, then the instructions will be similar to how we're going to be doing the finishing on this, which we'll do a little bit later in the video. So again, these are the ruched shorts. If you are making the non-ruched shorts, it is a different construction, so don't follow along with this part. This is only for the ruching. If you're doing the bikini, then it's a little bit different, so this probably won't be very helpful for you, this part of it. But there is, if you need like the step-by-step bikini, there is another video that you can watch, and we'll link that. We have a ton of swimsuit patterns, and they're constructed sometimes the same way. So we'll find one that's constructed the same way if you're doing the bikini and you need help with that. Okay, so let's do the ruched shorts. I'm making the high waist version. It doesn't matter if you're making the high or low waist version. You're going to do the same thing here. So I have my two fronts main fabric and two back main fabric here. And on mine, I've actually, because the fabric's so hard to tell, I've actually marked W for wrong side. So if you need to do that on yours, you can. So let's kind of do these one at a time. So here's the front. Here's my front and my front. So we're going to grab those right sides. So here's my right side facing up and my right side facing up. We're going to align the crotch curves, right sides together. So that's this curvy bit right here, and you can pin or clip those together. And then we're going to do the same thing for the back. And I'm going to put that clip back on here that tells me that's the front. I don't want to get confused. So see, I have mine marked 2 clips being the back. So I'm just going to put them both like that. And then you'll find your right sides of your fabric. And I thought I had these marked correctly. And then I'm like, nope, that's not right. Because they're the same way. And I cut them mirrors. So I know that's not right. Okay, so this one's my front. So I'm going to go ahead and put that W on the back. Some of these swim fabrics are tricky that way. Okay, so then we're going to put them right sides together and again, match up the crotch curves. Okay, and so you'll go ahead and sew these, but we do the same thing for the lining. So I'm going to put these to the side for just a second and grab the lining pieces. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to grab our 2 backs for the lining and put them right sides together and pin or clip them at the crotch. And then the same for the front lining. Okay, once you have those all clipped, all 4 of them, you can go sew them with a stretch stitch on your serger or your sewing machine. Just stitch each crotch curve here, here, and the 2 main pieces as well. And then we'll come back. Okay, next we're going to open up the shorts to the right side. And here at the bottom, there's like that little flat spot. You're just going to match up the right sides together, front and back, at that little spot there, right at the bottom of the crotch. So go ahead and pin or clip that together. Just like this. And then you'll take this over to your serger or sewing machine and go ahead and stitch just across that area. You can kind of flatten it out when you're sewing it, and then it will pull back just a little bit this way. And we're going to do the same thing with the lining. So you can grab your lining right side up on one of the pieces and then put the front or back, whichever one you grabbed, right sides together right at that bottom part. Same exact thing, and pin or clip that together. Once you have those seams sewn, we're going to open up the main pant. So this is my main fabric, and this is wrong sides up, so you can see my seams here. And then grab the lining one, and you're going to put them wrong sides together. So they'll be face up, but they'll be wrong sides together with the main fabric. Just like this. And then we need to make sure that we have the front with the front and the back with the back. Okay, so I have 2 clips on this side and 2 clips on this side. So however you mark that, make sure that you have the back with the back and the front with the front here. That's very important. And then we're just going to go ahead and match up all the side seams. So the side seams, the crotch seam, and the waist seam clip or pin all the way around these pieces. Okay, once you have everything clipped or pinned into place, we're going to do some different things depending on which side of this big piece that we're on. Okay, so right here and right here at the waists, we are going to just baste them closed. That's simple. And then along these side seams, you can choose to finish the edges if you'd like. So that would be, you can serge them, or you can do a zigzag stitch, or you can leave them raw. That's up to you. And then in this area right here, we're going to hem. So I recommend basting first. Baste this whole area. And you can actually get these kind of flat, which is neat. So this is that inner, this is like what's going to go around your leg. And so we can baste that, and then this is going to be hemmed to the wrong side, like this. So you can press it if you'd like, and we'll do those steps together. So anyway, that one's going to be hemmed. So I think let's start with the basting, because that's probably the easiest. So we'll take this over to the sewing machine and we'll baste along this edge and this edge. Okay, I went ahead and basted both of mine at just slightly less than a 1/4 inch seam allowance so that it doesn't show later. And I used a stitch length of 5. So that on this side and that side. Okay, so we still have a bunch of clips. We've got to deal with the other parts, right? So next, let's go ahead and take care of this and this side and this side. So if you'd like, you can take this over to your serger or your sewing machine. And if you're using a sewing machine, you just want to zigzag the edge here. And if you're using a serger, you can just zip along each of these edges here. Okay, I have all of mine serged here on each of these sides. So there's those 4 spots. Make sure you can see all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the next thing we're going to do is hem in this area here. So if this shape still looks confusing to you, I'm going to fold this up so you can see what it will look like in the end. So here's the shorts, and so you can see my clips are here on the bottom. So this is the part that we need to hem to the wrong side. And so we're just going to fold this to the wrong side and hem it like that. Now there's a couple of options on how we want to hem it. So you could, if you wanted to, first baste these areas and then press them, and then use either a sewing machine, and you can use whatever stretch stitch you love, or you could use a cover stitch. If you use a cover stitch, I do recommend testing it on your fabric first, just to make sure that it isn't going to pop when it comes over your thighs and it stretches out more like this, because depending on your settings on the cover stitch, it could definitely pop. So just test that out if you're going to do it. And so we're going to fold it back this way. So now you can see like exactly where we're doing that. But we're not doing it while it's closed like that. We're going to do it open. So if you'd like to baste this first, you can, and then go press it with your iron to the wrong side. That's what I'm going to do, so you can do it along with me. Now that we've got all that basted, we can go ahead and press this to the wrong side. Our hem allowance is 1/2 inch. Make sure that your iron temp is low enough that it's not going to melt your fabric. And I'm going to first just kind of straighten out that basting. And then we'll fold it to this wrong side by 1/2 inch. Okay, so along these straight ways, you can go ahead and add your pins or clips on both of these sides. And then here in the middle, since it is actually kind of on a curve, if you flip it up like this, you can get into that curve better and then get all of these situated at your 1/2 inch. And then when it closes later, you can also, you could also flip it this way. You just need it on that curve to make it make sense right here in the middle. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. Go ahead and press it and get all of these pins or clips on. And we'll take it to the sewing machine or the cover stitch, whatever you're deciding to do. On this one, you can do a triple stitch, a zigzag stitch, or you can even do a triple zigzag stitch. So that's the one that has like 3 steps. I can show you just here in a second if you're not sure what I mean. And then we're gonna go ahead and get that hemmed and also this other side. So I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. One more quick note before we sew this up. If you did a fit version, a muslin version, and you think that you need to add some elastic into this bottom part around the legs, and that really can only be, you could try to try it on, like kind of pin it together and try it on at this point and see if you think you need elastic in these bottom parts of the hem here. But it might be kind of tricky to know. So up to you. If you want to try to pin it together and put it on your model, then you can do that. Or if you've sewn a test version and it's gaping and it's too loose and you think, oh, they're going to ride up, you can add elastic. And what you want to do is add it into the back. So this side's my back right here. So on the back part, you're going to add just a bit of elastic from the crotch to the back seam here. And you can use like some clear elastic. And what you would do is before we close this, go ahead and put the elastic through here so that it's just kind of scrunches this part just a little bit. So you just baste the elastic on with a zigzag stitch. And then go ahead and fold this in. So you'd use a 1/4 inch elastic, and that's all in the instructions. So if you want to go look at that and see what it says about how to add it and exactly how you should test that fit, you can. Okay, let's talk about the settings for hemming. So you can, like I mentioned, use a triple stitch. That's this one. Or you can use a zigzag stitch, which is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use the zigzag stitch. And these are my settings, 3.5, 2.5. But you could also use a triple zigzag stitch. That's what this one right here. And just test that out on your fabric first. This one's very difficult to pick, but it has unbelievable stretch to it. So if you're worried at all about the stitches popping, you can also use this one. If you're sewing this with a cover stitch, obviously you need to sew it from the right side of the fabric, but if you're sewing it with a sewing machine, you can choose if you want to cheat, and I'm going to cheat today. So you can sew it from the right side, that's the proper way, or you can sew it from the back side so that you can see the edge here of your fabric that you're hemming. On this zigzag stitch, I'm going to pull it over, not quite off the fabric on my center bar here, but really close to this edge here, so that even if a stitch goes off right here, I'm okay with that. Or you can stitch right here on the edge on just your main fabric raw edge here if you'd like. Okay, we've done all the things. All the sides should now be finished or basted. And so now we're going to just fold this right sides together. You can turn it this way so it kind of looks like our shorts now. That's fun. And right here at the side seams, we are going to pin or clip these together. Okay, and then we're going to go over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew along both of these edges with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and that will allow us to open these up for a casing for drawstrings. So make sure you use your sewing machine, and you can use a triple stitch or a zigzag stitch. Those are probably your best options. Okay, once you have those all sewn up on the sides, take this over to your iron and go ahead and press these open like this. I've already done that with my iron, so that's why it's sitting a little bit nicer open. And then we're going to pin these to the side, open like this. Okay, word to the wise. You're gonna see me pinning down toward the leg openings. Don't do this. Do it the other way. Put your pins up toward the waistband because it's much easier to put this into the sewing machine from the waistband side. And this way your pins will be able to like pull out easily as you're sewing it. So do the opposite of what I did so that you don't get to the sewing machine and then have to flip all your pins around. Okay, once you have those all pinned into place, we are going to take this over to the sewing machine again, and just close to the edge, right here, all along this area, we're going to sew, and then the same here, all along this area. And you can choose to use a triple stitch or a zigzag stitch. Just make sure you get pretty close to this edge, because this is our casing where we're going to put the drawstrings through, and we need to have enough room here in the middle to fit that, and do it on, of course, both sides. Okay, I've got my little case here removed so that I have my free arm available. And then I'm going to start from the waist side because it's easier to shove it into the machine that way than through the leg hole. And just sew it right here along that edge. Okay, so you should now have these little drawstring casings that we're going to use here in just a moment. So next we need to actually sew the drawstrings. And I mentioned earlier in the video that we might try a little technique to flip them. And I did try it and it worked on a little scrap. But the only thing is, I don't think that you can close the ends, and we need to close one of the ends. So you could try it and see if you can close one of the ends before, or I guess you could like tuck it in or something like that. But if we want to be able to close one of the ends properly, then we can't do it with this method. But all you do is you just serge until you have a little bit longer than the drawstring itself. So I'm going to move these for a second. So you would serge something like about this long, and then pull the serger threads so they're skinny, and then you seat them into the drawstring itself. So let's pretend this is our serger tail. You would put that in there. And so you haven't cut the serger tail, so this is still connected to the machine. And then you serge all along, and then once you've gotten to the end, you can pull this through and it pulls the fabric right side out. But like I said, it's a little tricky and you can't close the ends. So I think we're gonna do the classic way for this video, but if you wanted to try it, that's how you do it. So you should have 4 drawstring pieces, and all we're going to do is just fold them in half long ways, or right sides together, and then you can sew it with your serger or with a stretch stitch all the way around, all the way down the length, and then we'll turn them right side out. And on one of the ends, one of the short ends, you want to finish that. So finish one of these short ends and the long ends on all 4 of these. Once you have all 4 of them sewn up and one of the ends is closed, we can turn them right side out, and you can choose whichever way you like to turn them right side out. I'm just going to go ahead and use the tube on all of these. Okay, now grab your shorts, and we're going to feed the drawstring through that casing. And I'm actually going to do this from the wrong side. I think we can see what we're doing a little bit better from that side. And so the end that you finished, that needs to go down at the bottom. And the end that is raw will go up toward the waist. And you can try to use a loop turner or a bodkin or a safety pin. I'm going to try the loop turner. We'll see if it works. Sometimes when the casing's really narrow, it just won't come through with this, but I am hoping that it will. So that end that's finished is going to go down. Okay, after fussing with these for a little bit, I found the best way to do it is to either have a safety pin come from that bottom finished edge at the hem, or you can use your loop turner, and it's easier to get the loop turner in from that waist end and then have the casing come out of this area because it's actually finished. Okay, once you have all of them through, you're just going to pull them each down until they're about 1/4 inch from that top at the waist area. And so be careful when you pull these in that you don't suck them all the way in, then you have to get them back out. I didn't just do that. It's tricky. So anyway, I recommend pinning them as you're doing it because they do want to suck in all the way. Okay, so on both sides, go ahead and baste right there at the top. Right across here and right across here. Okay, next grab your waistband piece and we're going to fold it right sides together, matching up those short ends. You can pin or clip that into place, and then we're going to go sew that short little end right here. Once you have that sewn into place, we're going to fold the waistband a long ways, wrong sides together. So we're going to close it up on that little seam there. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a clip right there at the seam. And then we're going to 1/4 the waistband. So see, here's my clip on the right side. On the left, exactly across from it, we're going to put another clip. You can use pins if you like. And then we're going to match up those 2 spots, and where it folds on these ends are our last 2 1/4 points. So these are our 1/2 points and these are our 1/4 points. Okay, now we're going to grab the waist of the pants and do the same thing. We're going to find those 4 points. So these are obvious because we have a seam at those 4 points. So I have here and then here. It's not always that way. Like sometimes when you're quartering things, it's not going to be at the halfway point, but it's pretty close here. So I think we can go ahead and just use those. If you've done any adjustments, and so it's something like when you fold these 2 parts together that it ends up like right here, put your clip there. But on mine, we're right here at the center on both sides. So we're ready to go there. So now you can grab your 1/4 waistband and your 1/4 shorts and we're going to put them right sides together. You can put the seam right here at the back of the shorts. So if you're not sure which one's the back anymore, it should be a little taller in the back. Do you see how mine is like up on this back part? So that's where we're going to put that seam there. Make sure that the band doesn't flip. It needs to be straight all along. And then you're going to just match up all of those cord points to the shorts. And right here where the drawstrings are, it might be a little bit tricky to pin into place. So I'm going to add just like 2 clips right there. And then if you'd like, you can add another clip in between each of these. If you haven't done very many bands, and especially with this slippery fabric, you might want to just add 1 more clip in between each of those 4 quarter points. And right here in the back, we're going to mark a little spot in which we are going to insert the elastic. So don't do it right here at the seam, but you can do it like right here or right here. We need a 2-inch gap to be able to insert that elastic. So we're going to sew all the way around this band at the waist, except this gap. So mark it how you like. I'm just going to double up my clips right here. And that will be my no-sew spot. Next, you should have cut a piece of 1-inch elastic that's about 2 inches shorter than the wearer's waist. There is a chart that you can go reference, or this can be a personal thing. If you don't like things as tight on you, you can cut it a little bit less. Do make sure that you exercise your elastic. If you've already cut it and you didn't exercise it now and go remeasure, because it'll probably be a little bit longer. And then we're just going to thread it through the casing of the waist. So you can use whatever you like to get it through here. I'm going to try the bodkin here. Make sure it's nice and tight, and then go ahead and thread it through that casing. Make sure it doesn't flip around. Okay, once you get it all out like this, you can go ahead and overlap the elastic by 1/2 inch and pin or clip that into place. And then we're going to go over to the sewing machine, and you can just do a zigzag stitch all the way down. I like to do a couple, so you can do like one right here and then another right next to it, and make sure that's really nice and secure. And once you have that elastic all closed up, we can just go ahead and fold the pants back how we had them to close up this gap right here. Make sure you have all your layers of fabric right in the right spot. And add a couple extra clips just to make sure. And then go over and go ahead and close up that gap in your waistband. Guess what? These are all finished. I think they turned out so cute. So these you can ruche up more and have them be kind of like more shorty shorts, or like a boy short look. So that's kind of fun. So when you try them on, kind of play with that and see how you like how it looks. Super cute. Okay, let's finish that top and then we'll be all done. So the last thing we need to do on either if you're making the tankini or the bikini, is to add elastic in the arm side, both of the arm sides and across the neckline. So you can use the reference chart to see how long you need to cut each of these elastics, or you can measure them out yourself and cut a piece of 1/4 inch elastic that's 85 to 90% of that opening. So if you want to measure them yourself, what I like to do is, like on this neckline, you can match up at these shoulder seams here, and then see how it kind of makes like a sort of a straighter line, and then use a ruler starting at that shoulder seam, and this fabric is doubled up, and just walk it along your ruler. So mine is 9 1/8, and then just double that. So you could say 9 1/8, that's the front, and then times 2. And then do the same thing for the back. I'm actually going to flip it around so that shoulder seam is at the 0 again. Make sure you're not stretching. We're just kind of pulling it flat. Hey, that's 9 3/4 for me. Times 2. And then you'll take 85 to 90% of that. And I like to cheat. You can type it 0.85 times the number, or just tell Google 85% or 90% of this. And then if you're wondering, like, should I do 85 or 90%? It just kind of depends on how tight you like it. You might want to try this on and just see, especially around the arm side. Like if it's already kind of tight, do 90%. If it's like really loose and gaping, you can do the 85%. And that will give you a pretty nice fit. Another thing you can do is, after you cut the elastic, pin it together and then put it around your arm side and see how it feels. Because I have done it before where I made it too small and it kind of scrunches up into my armpit and it's not very comfortable. So just think about that. Okay, so I have my neckline elastic and my 2 arm side elastics cut. I'm just going to take the elastics, make sure they don't twist, and overlap the ends by 1/2 inch. And secure those in place with a pin or clip, and then go sew them with a zigzag stitch on all 3 of these. Okay, so grab a clip and mark where the seam of your elastic is. And then right across from there, we're going to pull it out straight, and you're going to mark the opposite end. And then on the neckline, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to match up the shoulder seams here and mark the center front. Put a clip in that. And then flip it to the back. You can align those shoulder seams again and mark right there at the center back. Okay, so place the elastic over the wrong side of the neckline. So let's turn our whole thing inside out. And then find that front center, and that's where we're going to put the side of the elastic that does not have the seam. You can just go ahead and clip that on. And then we're not going to stretch, but we're just going to keep the elastic taut all the way up to this shoulder seam. So it's kind of like that, so that it's not loose. And clip that into place. And the same thing on the other side of the neckline. And then you can go ahead and keep it pulled taut and add some more clips to there. I'm going to pull it just a tiny bit more. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah. And then add your pins or clips in between each of those areas. Okay, and then I have had issues sometimes with these clips moving around on me, so I'm gonna add a couple of pins in here. I still like the clips, but if we add just a couple of pins, then we'll ensure that it doesn't get too out of place if anything decides to slip a bit. Okay, now across the back, we're going to get that clip into that center area right here. Make sure none of this is flipping around on you. And here, we're actually gonna do all that stretching. So you can just stretch the fabric and the elastic out until none of it's, you know, gaping or anything like that. And then you can place your clips or pins right in that area. Okay, once you have everything pinned or clipped in place how you like, we're going to go over to the sewing machine and sew this all into place. You're going to, on the back part, need to stretch this so that it's flat as you feed it through the machine. And on the front part, you shouldn't really need to do that because everything is pretty much one-to-one, right? We kind of just have it taut. So just make sure it stays straight. And I'm going to use a zigzag stitch. You can use whichever one that you would like. Okay, you're almost done. So the next thing we're gonna do is just fold all of these to the wrong side, right against the elastic, the entire neckline here. So you can pin or clip that into place. I'm gonna start like at the seams and just make sure those line up. And then I'll go back along the rest of it and clip those into place. Now you're going to take this back to the sewing machine and we're going to, from the right side, do a stitch all along here to hem and secure that. So you can choose whichever stitch you'd like. If you want to use a cover stitch, you can. If you want to use a zigzag stitch or even a triple zigzag stitch, those are all good. Just make sure that you're not sewing like at the top of this. We want to sew and secure the bottom, because we're trying to secure this part to the edge there. And if you sew it up too high, your neckline will flip out. So make sure that you're catching that bottom part of the seam all along here. And when you come around the back, remember that we're gonna have to do some stretching like this as you sew to keep it just kind of straight. You don't want your fabric scrunching up. You just want it to be, don't overstretch, just, you know, nice and flat all along there. Okay, let's do those arm side elastics and then we'll be all finished. So here's that seam of the elastic. We're going to put that onto the bottom here of the arm side, right there at that side seam. Okay, and then find the front of your bodice. Mine's obvious because it has the cup here. We are going to just put this taut up to the top of this shoulder seam. So you can pin or clip that into place. Not going to stretch too much, just keep it taut. And then along the back, that's where we'll do the stretching. So here is where you can pull it out like that and make sure that it is flush all the way down the arm side. And it's such a shorter distance that you should be able to just grab that center part right there. And I'm gonna be honest, I usually use my teeth for this, but since I'm trying to show you, I have to use a different method to get this straight. So we could just put it down flat probably on the table. And then hold that into place and then pin or clip it. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now we'll go sew it up exactly the same way as we started sewing the whole neckline here. So you'll put this on with a zigzag stitch or whatever stretch stitch you like, and then you're gonna fold it again and then top stitch from the right side just exactly the same way as this, and then you'll be all finished. Here is that final reveal that I promised you at the beginning. I think this turned out so cute. I love how it feels. The fit is great. The feel is nice. It doesn't feel like it's gonna go anywhere in the water. I love the little cute peplum. Oh, how did yours turn out? I would love to know if you love your swimsuit as well. And I did also promise you a little sneak peek of what's coming. So let me grab that. Here it is. Isn't this bag adorable? It has everything. I am super excited. I'm gonna bring this on my vacation. I'm gonna bring the swimsuit on my vacation, and I'm gonna be ready to go. So if you want to catch the tutorial for this bag, it will be in a couple more weeks from now here on this YouTube channel. We'll catch you next time.